Welcome to Slacker Sports Show.
Good evening, sports fans, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Slacker Sports Show, where we will be discussing the AFC West this week with the Chiefs, the Broncos, the new Las Vegas Raiders, and then the LA Chargers. And let's welcome into the podcast, Mark. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing well. I mean, this is probably going to be our favorite division preview podcast of all of them. We're both big Chiefs fans, so Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll try to keep it unbiased and make sure we give each team their due and go over each team. But this is probably our favorite division just because our favorite team's in it. Wanted to say that right off the bat.
Yeah, and let's just bring up the fact that Patrick Mahomes gets his Super Bowl ring, and then so he decides to give his girlfriend a ring as well. So now they are engaged, and I look at the pictures and I just wonder, there's no way he put all those flowers there. There's no way he did this. So, I guess when you get that
he had hookups with the janitors or something. Somebody got in there and decorated the whole thing for him. So he's got the money to do it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess when you get that big contract and, you get that Super Bowl ring, then people start doing nice things for you, huh?
Yeah.
All right, so starting off with the first team, and it is Kansas City Chiefs, not just because they're our favorite team, but because they won the division last year, finishing 12-4 on the year. They also, if you didn't know, won the Super Bowl last year, and, they're bringing a lot of people back from last year's squad. And we've had a few people that have decided not to play because of COVID or for whatever reasons. But, with who we have, Mark, what can we expect from the Chiefs this year?
I think they're Super Bowl contenders again. There's always the fact that other teams could step up. Injuries could happen to the Chiefs, knock on wood that they don't. But I think they're up there with the Ravens as far as the class of the AFC and could easily go to the Super Bowl again. Like you said, it's basically the same team coming back. They didn't go out and make any crazy free agent signings or let anybody go, really. So it's a lot of the same people from last year's Super Bowl squad coming back. And like I said, I think they have a chance to make it there again. There's always some variance, but they have the talent to go back-to-back. If the Ravens do outstanding, they might take them over, but the Chiefs are going to be a consistent player in the AFC for the future and for the years to come. And that's kind of one thing we wanted to hit on next is, do you think they're building a dynasty? I know there was several contract stories that came up with the Chiefs throughout this offseason, Mahomes being the big one, that basically $500 million contract ties him to the team for 10-plus years. Chris Jones got a 4-year contract extension, so a big player on the defense. And Travis Kelce signed an extension. He's going to be here for another 5 years. So do you think the Chiefs are building a dynasty? Do you think they can keep it up and win a couple more Super Bowls in the next 10 years? Or do you think the team will fall off at some point? I don't know how you see this going.
Well, they recently, as in yesterday, I believe is when I saw it, they signed their head coach back again for, I think through 2025, right? Is Andy Reid's?
Yeah, it was a couple years of an extension, I think.
Yeah, I think Andy Reid is through 2025, and then the GM, Brett Veach, also got an extension through 2025. So it looks like at least through 2025, they are wanting to keep this team's core together, and that's kind of what they did. They have a few players that still need more of a, I guess, I wouldn't say a bigger contract, but more of an extension, and that's kind of like Tyreek Hill. I think he's like 2023 maybe or 2022, so they'll have to sign him eventually or move on from him. But they said basically, and I just know way too much about this, but the way Mahomes built his contract was to benefit basically to benefit him, but in a more giving way to the Chiefs and the Chiefs Nation. Basically what he did is he gets his money, but he gets it without taking up too much salary cap so that the team can use it on other big contracts like Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, players like that. So he did get the biggest contract in NFL history so far, but it's not actually taking up a lot of salary cap space. So it's kind of unique how they did it. I'm sure the NFL will come in and change kind of how salary cap is working and stuff like that, because he kind of found a loophole in that whole thing, which is awesome for us. But they'll definitely take care of it, because otherwise other teams now can do the same thing once they found out kind of what happened. But to kind of answer your question, Mahomes, when he signed the contract, we knew right away that this was all going to come together, because he said, basically he's like, I'm so glad that, the Chiefs trust me and everything, but we're building a dynasty. And then kind of whenever he said that, it kind of left the door open to, the Chiefs are working on something. And then when it came out about his contract, a lot of places were saying, wow, they have all the salary cap space still. They could sign back all their good players, and that's kind of what they did. They gave Kelce a pretty big extension as well. Chris Jones got the contract he wanted. I know he was talking about setting out, but I think once Mahomes signed that contract, then Jones knew that, hey, I'm gonna get what I want. A couple players to kind of make note of is like Sammy Watkins. He actually took a pay decrease in his contract, because he said he wants to be Super Bowl champions. He wants to be a part of this dynasty. So you got players that are being unselfish for their pocketbooks and trying to build a dynasty here. And I think that's what it takes to build a dynasty. I think you got to have people that want to be there to win and not want to be there for the paycheck, because if you have too many good players like the Chiefs have, you can't pay everyone. Like, eventually you run out of money, and so either someone has to take a decrease so that someone can get an extension, or you have to figure out how you're going to pay all these people. And they've kind of figured it out for at least the next 5 or so years. So yeah, I think they're wanting to build a dynasty. Whether or not it actually works out will be another story. I like where it's heading though. I feel like the Chiefs could win 3 or 4 out of the next 5 years. I think they could win 3 or 4 Super Bowls out of the next 5 years, if you ask me. And I feel like they just keep adding to their team. Like, they just keep adding good players over and over again. They got Tyrann Mathieu. He comes in and basically is a completely different player than what he was before. And now you got, and everyone kind of criticized them going out and getting a running back this year. But you look at the Chiefs running backs for the last couple of years, and they haven't missed on their running backs. They had, after the Priest Holmes era, you got Jamal Charles. They didn't miss on him. Then more recently, you got Kareem Hunt, which, yeah, he was really good his rookie season. Then he kind of ran into trouble and stuff like that. But they've really not missed on a running back, and they went out and got a really good one from LSU. And it sounds like with Damian Williams, who's kind of opted out of the season, it looks like the rookie might actually be starting at the running back position. So it'll be fun to see this team grow. But the fact that they're all, I wouldn't say all young, but you got Patrick Mahomes, who's under 25. You got a brand new running back that's 20. Tyreek Hill's not even 30 yet. Kelce's not 30. McCole Hardman was a rookie last year, and he's one of the best wide receivers in this group. So you just have the core group already that are very, very young. So now all you got to do is kind of fill in the other spots, and that's kind of what the Chiefs have done. So, long story short, yes, I think they're building a dynasty. We'll see if it actually works out. What do you think? Do you think obviously I would say, anybody would say that they have the makings of a dynasty, but do you think it's possible to have another dynasty kind of like the Patriots?
Yeah, and that's actually a good thing to bring up, because that's kind of who I was going to compare them to. I mean, Mahomes has that huge, you see the number $500 million, but like you said, it's structured in a way that he is not going to be getting all this money at one time, or it's kind of set up so that there's other money, like you said, to go get people. That's what Tom Brady did for so many years. I mean, I don't think he was ever top 5 in salary for quarterbacks. He just kind of took a like $15 to $20 million salary, and then the Patriots had more money to go spend on everybody else. And so I think having Mahomes locked up on a deal that maybe on its face doesn't look team friendly, but actually is for the next 10 years, sets them up really well. You do have Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, like we mentioned, locked up for about the next 4 or 5 years. So you got some big name players in the same positions. I think what will be interesting is to see how Brett Veach handles this, and I think it should be applauded because you talked about their cap space. I think at one point this offseason they had like $171, not 171,000 or 171 million. They had $171 in cap space, and they just restructured so many contracts that now they have like 11 million, I think. So like you said, the NFL might look into how they did this, but I think besides the players on the field, Brett Veach, who's a younger guy, I think he's like barely 40, keeping him around, and if he kind of builds the roster in the same way going forward, that'll have a big impact. Andy Reid, I mean, he's had a very successful NFL career. Seeing how long he sticks around will be interesting because Mahomes and the whole team loves him, and I don't know where you'll get kind of his play calling creativity if he leaves. But I think on the field, I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. You got your quarterback locked up for a decade, and you can kind of go out and sign people. If, say, they want to let Travis Kelce go at the end of this contract, he's going to be in his 30s. They might want to get a younger tight end. They could do that, and they're giving themselves some flexibility with their contract structure. So I don't know if I'm up there with you as far as maybe 3 or 4 championships in the next 5 years. I could see maybe 1 or 2. I think there's just so much that goes on in the NFL that I don't want to go too high. I mean, I'd be thrilled if I was proved wrong and they did get 3 or 4 in the next 5 years. But I do think they're going to be like the Patriots, where they're never going to be out of it. They're always going to be in play for a Super Bowl berth, and could by the end of Patrick Mahomes' career have 3 or 4. I just don't know if they'll be all together. So definitely think it could be a dynasty, but there's a couple of factors that'll play into how long the dynasty can last.
And to go over against their rivals, the Denver Broncos, they finished 7-9 last year. And I think the biggest thing, to me at least, that they did this year was they went out and got Melvin Gordon. I was actually hoping the Chiefs would be able to afford him, but you know, we just talked about it. They didn't have the money to be able to pay Melvin Gordon a top-end running back. So he went to the Denver Broncos, and it's weird because if I remember right, the Denver Broncos got 2 running backs in Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, both that they love very, very much, and we're talking so highly about them and all of this stuff. And now they go out and sign a very expensive free agent, Melvin Gordon. What do you think that does for their team? And do you think adding Melvin Gordon is steps and bounds better than Lindsay and Freeman?
I am not sure at this point. It'll be interesting to see it played on the field this year. But like you said, they were high on those 2 guys, and I think Lindsay's kind of been the one who's dropped down on their depth chart, at least according to like ESPN. But if Melvin Gordon, if he can be what he was a couple years ago, that'll be a huge boost for them. And I think that he would be better than either one of those guys if he can be the Melvin Gordon of, say, 2018. There's just no guarantee of that. Last year, he, I think, had a contract holdout at the beginning of the year and then maybe suffered an injury, if I remember right, and Austin Eckler kind of took his job from him. So if Melvin Gordon can be what he was, that could be a huge boost for the Broncos and kind of scare the rest of the division. But I think they have other needs they need to address as well. They did pick up a receiver, Jerry Jeudy, who's kind of one of the big 3 guys in the draft. With him, Ceedee Lamb, who went to Dallas, and then Henry Ruggs, who also went to the AFC West with the Raiders. They're putting a lot into kind of that basket and to see what he could do to kind of bank on his talent. I have questions about their quarterback. I mean, I know Denver fans really love Drew Lock, and I didn't watch enough Broncos games last year to know if he's any good. But I know Broncos fans are high on him, but I don't think he's top half in league as far as quarterbacks go yet. He could be, but I don't think he's there yet. So they got some pieces and could be building something with a young quarterback, young receiver, a good running back in Melvin Gordon, or at least solid backups like the guys you mentioned earlier. But their defense is one thing where I don't think either of us are sure where they could be yet. That was their strength a couple of years ago when Peyton Manning was there and they were in the playoffs and all that stuff. Do you think Von Miller and that defense can get back to where they were a couple of years ago?
I'm not sure if they can get back to where they were just because they lost a lot of pieces. Like you look at Harris Jr., who actually plays now for the Chargers. Losing Chris Harris and a few other people in that defense really kind of hurt their secondary, and I just feel like their secondary isn't good enough to go against teams like the Chiefs that are going to pass basically day and night, and the Chargers, who are normally very pass heavy but will kind of cover them later since they don't have Phillip Rivers. They might be running kind of a different offense there in LA, but I don't know if their defense will ever be as good as they were before just because they don't have the people there that have proven themselves. They might have the people there. They just haven't done it yet. You know, like Kareem Jackson, he's had some good games, but he's had some games where it kind of makes him look bad. So Von Miller definitely the best person on that defense still, and Von Miller has kind of dropped off himself, I feel like, lately. I feel like there was a point where he was kind of the best linebacker in the game, and now he's kind of, I would even call him second-tier linebacker compared to like a TJ Watt, the way he played at the end of the year. Chicago's guy, I can't even think of his name right now, but there's a lot of great linebackers that I feel like kind of took over Von Miller. The one thing I will say is that they really do believe in their wide receiver that they drafted, and I believe in Locke. And from basically Locke played 5 games last year. He had 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, which, I mean, that's good. He had a quarterback rating of 89.7, which isn't bad at all, but I just don't. I mean, that's, again, it's only 5 games. Again, it's at the end of the year when other teams are tired, and so I don't know what to say of it or read into it. I don't know if they've got their quarterback for the future. I don't know if Locke will be more of a just mid-tier all the time type of quarterback. Trying to think of like who to compare him to, even maybe like I wouldn't say as good as Phillip Rivers, because Phillip Rivers had a lot of great years, but like a quarterback kind of like that, never really the top quarterback in the league, but does just enough to keep his team winning and keep helping their team along. But again, the Broncos, I feel like, got a little help from Melvin Gordon, but that's not going to fix their problems. Their offensive line didn't look great last year. They really struggled on the offensive line, and I don't think they really went out and addressed that necessarily. But yeah, and then their number 2 wide receivers, their rookie and Jeudy, and then Cortland Sutton is their number 1. And he had a few good games last year, Sutton did, but they were few and far between. He had over 1,000 yards, which, if you know, that's pretty good. But he had 6 touchdowns, which, is what it is. But so he did okay, but he also got thrown to a lot. 124 targets for him last year, only 72 receptions. So 50 of those targets weren't receptions. So, take it for what it's worth. I don't think Denver is going to be much better than they were last year, especially with, I feel like, kind of the lower half of this AFC West is going to be a lot better. So they finished 7-9 last year in second place, kind of tied with the Las Vegas Raiders. But we'll wait and see how they do this year. But speaking of the Las Vegas Raiders, yes, they have moved to Las Vegas, and yes, I will continue to call them the Oakland Raiders until, it's not a normal thing anymore. Just like I still call the LA Rams the St. Louis Rams, because I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because they kept the same mascot and everything's the exact same except they just moved locations, or what's going on with it. But Las Vegas Raiders, and I think they have their new stadium is up, and I think they're trying to decide if they're going to let people in on these games or not. If you don't know anything about Las Vegas, it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere, but there's just a ton of people there. So I don't know how big it's going to be as far as football goes. I know obviously the whole betting thing is going to keep people intrigued, at least in Vegas, but I don't know if they're going to really have the turnout and the love that they had in Oakland with their hardcore fans that they kind of left behind. What do you think, Mark? Do you think them moving to Las Vegas was a good move for the Raiders, or do you think it will kind of take them a couple years to get up to kind of where they were in Oakland?
This probably sounds like a bad answer, but I'd say both. I mean, they're following the money, so that's good for them. But like you said, the support is going to take a while. I mean, I know Vegas is kind of a mix of people from everywhere who just kind of end up moving there because they want to be close to casinos and kind of close to the action and everything. So I don't know if they'll have a set fan base when they get there, but their stadium is very, very nice. If you haven't seen it, you might try to find videos on YouTube and kind of a stadium tour of it. It's really nice. But like you said, I think it'll be a little bit before they have that rabid fan base, and it may never be like it was in Oakland. I mean, you hear about the black hole and all the crazy people who were there. I don't know if they'll ever get that in Las Vegas, but I think it's good financially for them, and it kind of maybe resets the franchise as far as where they're going and how they'll handle the culture going forward. So I don't think it's a bad move. I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but I'm just kind of meh on the move to Las Vegas, I guess. Kind of just looking over the roster, I think we do have a couple questions about people on their roster. Derek Carr, their quarterback, he had a great, I think, rookie year or second year, and he's kind of just been back and forth since then. He's probably their biggest question for me. What do you think about Derek Carr? Is he somebody that can carry them to the playoffs at some point? Should they be looking for another quarterback after this season? Kind of use this as a make-or-break year for him? What do you think about their quarterback situation?
Well, I know that he was born in 1991, so he's 29 years old, just like me. And one thing I could tell you is quarterbacks usually last into their 40s, but I don't think it's going to be Carr's age that kind of drives him out. I just don't think that he's going to be good enough unless he changes. He had a few good years a couple years ago where he really played well. And last year, even looking at his stats, I mean, they weren't awful. He had over 4,000 yards, was 8th in total yards. He had 21 touchdowns, which was tied for 19, so kind of the bottom half. 8 interceptions, which is mid-tier. And he ended up with a quarterback rating of 62.2, which is 10th. So I guess you could say he's a top 15 quarterback. The only problem is, how long can you be a top 15 quarterback and not do anything with it? Because not that you have to be a top 10 or a top 5 quarterback to make it to the playoffs and make a run, but rarely do you see a team have a very mid-tier, not like upper mid-tier, but very mid-tier quarterback every single year make it far in the playoffs. It's just not something you really see. And because of the way their roster is kind of, I guess, looking right now, I'm honestly worried because they got, with their first-round pick this year, 12th overall pick, they picked Henry Ruggs, which right now, looking at their depth chart, that is their number 1 wide receiver. So they have a rookie number 1 wide receiver. They went out and got Nelson Agholor, which, if you don't know anything about him, he gets injured all the time. Like, I feel like when I had him on fantasy, it was played a game, take 4 off, played a game, take 4 off. So I don't know if he could stay away from the injuries, if he could actually be a good, and I mean good, wide receiver, but they just don't have the wide receiver core to help Carr out. Carr is already a mid-tier quarterback. If he had a good wide receiver, it might make him look better, but I don't see that yet. And I'm not saying Ruggs isn't a good wide receiver. we haven't seen him play a down of NFL yet. There's a big difference between college and pro. And I feel like, especially for wide receivers, I feel like wide receiver is such a rare breed for great top-end wide receivers. Like kind of what we talked about the last podcast about Hopkins. There's only like so many wide receivers that are top tier, like tier 1, that come through every 3 years. Usually about one great wide receiver comes through and stays great, has a great career. And it could be Ruggs. It could be him. I just don't know. We don't know anything until the season starts. And we see, Carr might have some issues throwing to him. They might not read routes the right way or whatever. And another thing that I'm kind of worried about is their running game. Josh Jacobs was supposed to have this great breakout season. He was supposed to get all this workload and everything, and he didn't really do much with it. He had 242 attempts, tied for 13th in the league. He was 8th in yards rushing with 1,150, and mid-tier with touchdowns 7 with tied with 14. But I think he did have a few games where he looked great. The Chiefs game, I think he had 104 yards. The Bengals game, he had 112. So he had a few good games, but it just wasn't. The Raiders being down does not help them, and their defense isn't good enough for them to stay in games. And I think that's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest thing with pretty much everyone we talk about is you can have a great offense, but if your defense isn't good enough to at least help you along, your offense isn't going to matter. Kind of vice versa. You can have the greatest defense in the world like the Chicago Bears, but your offense is crap. You're not going to win games. So you really need a mixture of some sort between the both of them, and that's kind of where I feel like the Raiders are right now, is they don't have a good enough defense to really keep them in games. So they're going to be more throwing with David Carr, which is going to be more yards for him and more interceptions, more touchdowns, but Josh Jacobs isn't going to get that many rushing yards. You look at the Jets game where he only got 10 attempts for 34 yards. They were down 34-3 to the Jets. So it's going to be hard to see this team play this year and know where they're starting and where they're going to end up. It could be completely different. Could be a completely different team. We could see Carr get benched and Mariota comes up. They picked up Mariota, and with them doing that makes me think that what they're planning that, hey, if Carr's not working out, we kind of have another backup option. And Mariota's not really like he's a second string because he just hasn't been able to put a full year together in the pros, but Mariota isn't a guy that's normally like, Mariota's going to be a guy that could give you top tier numbers. So for them to go out and spend that money on a second quarterback makes me kind of wonder what's going on with the Raiders. If they are kind of what you said, giving him this year, seeing what he does. If he kind of flops, let's bring in Mariota or Nathan Peterman's their third string. He's a young guy. I'm interested to see if they play around with this roster a little bit, or if they look for a quarterback next year, or if they have a lot of holes. They have a lot of things that really need fixed. Looking at their defense, I don't really see anybody that really jumps out and says like, hey, I'm really good. So their defense wasn't great last year. I don't expect them to be that good this year. So Raiders, another team kind of in this division that just don't look like they're doing much. And looking at the Chiefs' record, 12-4, if you remember right, Mahomes was hurt for a couple weeks last year, and they were still able to win, and that's mostly because this division, besides the Chiefs, is down. I mean, the Broncos finished 7-9 in second place, Raiders 7-9, and the Raiders didn't play that well last year. A guy that did play well was Darren Waller. The tight end, he finished 6th in fantasy, so might be a guy you go after, speaking of fantasy. So they've had bright spots. I just don't know with their roster as a whole if they're going to be able to do anything in this division. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of this, but basically they have kind of like middle-of-the-road guys at a lot of different positions. Carr's good, but not great. Mariota, if he took over, he's good, but not great. Agholor, like you said, is either hurt or just inconsistent. I've had him in fantasy too, and even when he's healthy, it seems like he'll have a 10 reception game and then have 2. He'll just kind of bounce all over the place. Henry Ruggs, I do have some questions. I mean, he's kind of a classic guy that the Raiders draft, just super fast, kind of blow the top off of people. It'll be interesting to see if he's actually good and well-rounded or if he's just fast. I mean, I think he was at Alabama last year, and it seemed like a lot of his touchdowns, a lot of his receptions were just kind of deep go routes. So it'll be interesting to see if he can run like a full wide receiver route tree and actually be a well-rounded player instead of just being fast. Like you said, Josh Jacobs' running game could be a concern. So I don't think they really have too much of a backup if he's not doing well. And then Darren Waller could be his kind of security blanket, a tight end they could pass off to. Like Trevor said, he was 6th in tight end points last year. So if you're looking for a sleeper tight end in fantasy, he might be a guy to pick up. But they're just kind of middle of the road everywhere, and that's not where you want to be in the NFL. You either want to be bad and picking up high draft picks and cutting big salaries and getting free agents, or you want to be all in. You can't really be middle of the road. And besides the Chiefs, a lot of these teams in this division are kind of middle of the road. And we'll hit on the last team, the Chargers, here in a little bit, but you just got to commit one way or the other. If you're sticking with John Gruden and you want him to rebuild, then tank. If you're thinking you can push for the top, then go get a big trade, go sign a big free agent. But they're just kind of the middle of the road right now, and it's not too inspiring for Raiders fans or people who think they may turn the corner.
Yeah, and you bring up a really great point that I think that way too, but I don't know why nobody else. I feel like nobody else thinks this way, or there's something kind of, you know how we talked about the unwritten rules of baseball. I don't know if there's like unwritten rules of building an organization, but I feel completely the same way in the fact that if you're going to be good, then go all in. If you don't think your team has a chance, don't like, get your younger guys a little bit of experience, do this, do that, but don't I don't know. Yeah. Like finish in the middle of the road does nothing for you. You don't get great young talent like a Trevor Lawrence or, like a top 5 pick. And it's just, yeah, I don't understand it. And baseball does, I feel like, the best job of it because of where the trading deadline is. And baseball's kind of known for this, that if a team is not going to most likely make the playoffs, they're called sellers. And the teams that are really trying to make the playoffs or think they're going to make the playoffs are buyers. And basically you'll have the team like the Royals who are sellers. They're not going to make the playoffs this year. So the players that they're playing very, very well with right now, they trade them for young prospects for a team that really needs what the Royals have. And I feel like that doesn't happen in the NFL. I don't really understand why. I don't know if it's because maybe more of a chemistry thing, but like you look at this team and you see, okay, maybe we're trying to rebuild this thing. Well, you drafted Josh Jacobs last year or the year before. I think it was last year. And you have Carr. Well, Carr could actually help a team that's better, that has better wide receivers. And so why don't you, try to trade him and package him for, some defensive guys and then, play bad this year and get your quarterback for next year. But I don't think the NFL's like that. But I like the point that you made that you want to be either all in and trying to win championships, trying to win, Super Bowls, or you don't want to really be that good at all. So you're getting draft picks so that eventually, yes, you can be that great team. And it's weird to me that teams that'll be like 6-6 are doing all these crazy things trying to get in the playoffs, and it's like you're 5 games out. You have to win your last 6 games, and first place has to lose their next 6 games for you to get in the playoffs. That's not going to happen. So why are you not necessarily tanking games? Because that's why I wonder if there's this unwritten rule of, you don't do that. And some teams have been kind of caught with it, like the 76ers in the NBA, kind of tanking games to try to get those draft picks. And I feel like maybe some football teams could be under criticism for that as well. But I don't see the Raiders doing much this year, and they do. They either need to decide, hey, we're going to try to rebuild this, kind of like what you said with Gruden, either rebuild or go for it all, try to really get some good players in, but they didn't really do anything in the offseason. I didn't see any big free agent signings from them that would really make their team better. They pretty much just took the team from last year, boom, same exact team, and last year finishing 7-9 wasn't good enough. I don't think it's going to be good enough this year either.
And we'll move on to the team that finished at the bottom of the division last year in the Los Angeles Chargers, another team where we used to say in San Diego still do that, but Los Angeles Chargers finished 5-11 a season ago. Obviously, a big change at quarterback. Phillip Rivers is gone, but Tyrod Taylor came in. He's kind of their starter right now, and they did draft who they think to be their quarterback of the future, Justin Herbert from Oregon. Do you think he could be a star in the future? Do you think he has a chance of playing it all this season, or are they just going to stick with Tyrod Taylor and let Herbert learn? What do you think he's going to do this year and maybe even going forward?
So I think this is a weird position because the Chargers got rid of Phillip Rivers, and I feel like Phillip Rivers is a veteran quarterback that you could learn a lot from with a young guy. And looking at what the Chiefs did with Alex Smith and keeping Patrick Mahomes under him for a whole year, basically Smith showed him the ropes, how to do this, how to read defenses. It's hard to, try not to get off topic. It's hard to believe that out of college, Patrick Mahomes didn't know how to read defenses. He didn't know how to read defenses until he got to the NFL, which is crazy to think of, but especially with what he's doing and his success. But I feel like if they want Justin Herbert to be their quarterback, they maybe should have signed Phillip Rivers for another year. Yeah, it would suck to have to pay this huge salary that he's going to want. But I feel like they almost kind of owe it to Phillip Rivers for all these years of being great and not necessarily giving him always the best solution. I feel like the last couple of years has kind of fallen apart because they've kind of lost out on Keenan Allen being injured, Melvin Gordon moving on. And so I feel like, yeah, I could see why they got rid of Phillip Rivers, but if they're wanting Justin Herbert to be their quarterback for the future, which I think he can, I think he is kind of built for the NFL, the way he plays isn't like a lot of the Oregon quarterbacks. And if you don't know anything about me, my other favorite team in college besides the KU Jayhawks is Oregon. Kind of ever since middle school, I think just the flashy uniforms and then just really getting behind the team and learning their offense and how creative and stuff it was with Chip Kelly. Oregon is a kind of a fast-paced run and gun, like a bunch of options, a bunch of weird plays have kind of been Oregon. But under Herbert, they were more of a drop back and pass team. Yeah, they still did kind of the weird plays, the up-tempo stuff, but they've really dialed it back with Herbert, and I think that really suited him well at Oregon. And I think he's a perfect specimen for quarterback for the NFL. Saying all of that, they picked him number 6 overall, but then they give him Tyrod Taylor to learn behind, a quarterback that hasn't really proven to do anything except fill in for people in the NFL. Like last year he had four completions on 6 attempts. So he had 6 attempts the whole year, mostly injured, mostly didn't play, all this other stuff, and you're going to try to put in your future quarterback that you want to build your franchise around. You're going to bring him in to learn from a guy that really isn't a good quarterback, to be honest with you. He's not I wouldn't even say he's a top 20. He might be in fantasy because he runs, but he's not even a top 20 quarterback. I'm just surprised. I thought they should have kept Phillip Rivers for another year for Herbert to set behind, learn the ropes, learn how to play, and then boom, they got kind of the same situations as the Chiefs do. But by doing that, I feel like they've really kind of hurt Herbert by not giving him a good quarterback to learn from. And I feel like that's kind of going to be the Chargers this year, is they're going to have very, very spotty quarterback play. They might even put Herbert in to try to get a few games in, which I'm not sure I agree with or not, based on the games, I guess. But we'll wait and see. I mean, the Chargers finished 5-11 last year. A lot of that was Melvin Gordon stuff going on, Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry trying to stay healthy. They did have Austin Eckler come in and just completely destroy people. It'll be fun to see if he can do that again. So besides Herbert, besides kind of the quarterback, Tyrod Taylor type of thing, the rest of their offense doesn't look bad as long as they can stay healthy. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I haven't heard much out of camp about Herbert, but it'll be interesting to see how good he is and how much of a chance he has to play right away, because you could almost say they're on two separate timelines depending on who they go with. Tyrod Taylor, if you stick with him throughout the year, you could get a team who might be pushing for the playoffs if Herbert doesn't get to play and Tyrod there the whole year. They have enough talent about everywhere else that if Tyrod is serviceable, then they could be a playoff team. If Herbert's good right away and they want to play him, then they can maybe be a playoff team. I just don't know where he's at. If he's not where they want and Tyrod doesn't perform great, they may have to kind of reset things and rethink where they're at. So it kind of depends on how good Herbert is. And like I said, I haven't heard anything either way. But whoever's at quarterback, like you said, they do have some weapons potentially. If Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry can both stay healthy, those are both great targets. Keenan Allen is pretty widely regarded as one of the better wide receivers in the league. Hunter Henry can be a good tight end, but he's fought injuries about every year. You talked about Austin Eckler. If he can do what he did last year, that's another big weapon for whoever's at quarterback. So I think they're pretty solid. Just a big question at quarterback, which is the most important position. And something you pointed out in kind of our pre-podcast discussion is how good their defense is. A lot of household names that you'll hear about, a lot of top draft picks and guys like Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, Chris Harris. We talked about him. He used to play for the Broncos, kind of moving over. Casey Hayward's another guy. They do have a big loss that came out. This news came out, I think, a day or two ago with Derwin James, their strong safety, who was a high draft pick a couple years ago and has played really well. He's out 6 to 8 months with a knee injury and having to get surgery on that. So this could be a team kind of comparing them maybe to like the Chicago Bears, where they have this great defense and then maybe kind of a middling offense. It'll be basically all on whoever's at quarterback to unlock this team's potential, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the quarterback role is I feel like if they would have had Rivers for another year, this team could have actually done something and kind of brought Herbert along. I feel like this quarterback position will make or break the season, kind of what you said. If Taylor plays well, they could make the playoffs. If Taylor plays bad, then they lose another whole year of all the great talent they have with it, like Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, and then the defense. But I do have to say, I think this defense is close to the Chiefs' defense as far as game management goes. I don't think this defense is a defense that completely shuts down teams like the Bears, but I also don't think they're a slouch defense either. And I think this defense could actually put up a really good fight with the Chiefs' offense, but vice versa, the Chiefs have a really good really good defense as well. And I don't know if the Chargers' offense can stay up with it if they have questions at quarterback. But as far as their other their other positions go, you're right. They have a great running back in Agholor. They got one of the best wide receivers in Keenan Allen if he could stay healthy. Hunter Henry has proven that he can be a great tight end, but he just can't stay healthy. So they got all those positions where they're looking good. Not to mention they got Beluga on the offensive line. They got Dan Feeney. They got Mike Pouncey. They got some offensive line guys that are veterans and could be really, really good. So I guess they finished 5-11 last year, and I just don't see that happening this year. So let's go into, at the end of every podcast, we kind of go through what we think the final division standings will be at the end of the season. So I guess I'm going to start it off and just pick the Chiefs because, this division has one outlier, and that's the Chiefs. Chiefs, obviously. And I honestly think they'll have a better year than they did last year. I could see them going 14-2 this year. It's all going to matter on if Mahomes, or I shouldn't say Mahomes in general, but if their stars can stay healthy. If they have injuries on the offensive line, I'm a little scared for Mahomes because that's been a problem in the past. It's kind of what happened last year is we had so many injuries on the offensive line that they just couldn't keep Mahomes upright, which basically led to his injury, the dislocated kneecap that kept him out for like 3 or 4 weeks. So if we can keep, our people, our core healthy, then the Chiefs will be obviously the front runner in this division. And then I actually have the Chargers coming in at second, and it's not because of Tyrod Taylor. It's not because of the quarterback. Honestly, it comes down to the Raiders and Broncos just aren't good, is what it comes down to, really. The Chargers finished 5-11 last year, but their defense is too good, and they have too many offensive weapons, even with a shoddy quarterback at best. I feel like they can just win games based on just how many good people they have on their team. So I got the Chargers in second place, and then I'm actually going to go with the Broncos in third. I think the Broncos, if Locke can play great more than just 5 games, the last 5 games, then they're going to be pretty good. They've got a few good pieces in there. They got Melvin Gordon, and Denver has always kind of been, well, I wouldn't say always, but they've lately been that team that likes to run a lot. So I could see them using Melvin Gordon pretty well in that offense. And then the Raiders in last place, I don't see Derek Carr having a very good season. They don't really have anything for him to throw to. They have Waller, but it takes 2 linebackers to cover a tight end, and what are your everyone else is one-on-one. If your wide receivers can't win routes one-on-one, then it's not going to matter. And I don't think they have the wide receiver group to do so. So I got in first place the Chiefs, second place the Chargers, third place the Broncos, and fourth and final the Raiders. What do you have, Mark?
I have the exact same order. I'll expand on it a little bit. It may be boring that we have the same order, but like you said, it's basically the Chiefs and everybody. I know. Basically the Chiefs and everybody else in this division, kind of like you said, unless injuries happen or something kind of unforeseen happens to the team, they're going to be the class of the division and should run away with it. As far as the Chargers, I have them second as well. I think even if they get kind of middle-of-the-road quarterback play from either one of these guys, they just have so much talent everywhere else that they'll be, kind of like I said, maybe Chicago Bears, what they did last year, be probably 8-8 or 9-7. And if they can get good quarterback play, doesn't have to be great, but good, they can maybe be a team who's pushing for the wild card. So got the Chargers in second, Broncos in third, like you did. I think if Melvin Gordon can be what he was, that'd be a big bonus for them. Drew Lock getting more playing time. If he's consistent, that could be great for them. If Jeudy, it kind of pans out for them, I think that could be big. And then Raiders, like we said, are kind of just middle of the road, don't have any stars, don't have anybody that's really exciting, and don't seem like they have a direction right now. So I have them in fourth, and I don't think even this division's going to bottom out and be terrible. I don't think there's going to be a 2-14 team or a 3-13 team, but I think it'll be probably the Chiefs, like you said, maybe 12-14 wins. Chargers, I'd say between 7 and 9 wins. Broncos, probably not too far behind them. I'd say maybe 6 wins, and the Raiders maybe 4 or 5. But I don't think anybody's going to be bottoming out in this division.
Yeah, and kind of what you said earlier, you need to pick a direction, and most of these teams, I think the Broncos have a direction, honestly. I think I feel like they'll have a direction in a year or two, depending on how Jerry Jeudy does, depending on how Drew Lock does. I think this team could be very solid in a couple of years, depending on how they end up being in their career. As you said, the Raiders, they don't seem to have any direction. I mean, they had to move cities, so they have no sense of direction right now. And then the Chargers, I feel like they're one good quarterback away from being a playoff team every year, because their defense is kind of getting a little older. Chris Harris Jr. Is getting a little older in that secondary, but I feel like they got Agholor, who's a very young running back. Keenan Allen, which is kind of middle of the road. He's got probably 5 or 6 seasons before calling it quits. And then if they can keep Hunter Henry healthy, he's a very young tight end. So I feel like the Chargers have a direction. They're just looking for that final piece, which is the quarterback position. And once they find that, then they're going to be kind of a playoff team too. So I do think the Broncos and the Chargers have a direction, which is going up. The Raiders, I feel like they think they have a direction. They just don't. When you look at it, they just don't have a clear direction. But yeah, I agree. No team's going to bottom out in this division. I see maybe one of these teams beating the Chiefs once this year, maybe. I don't know. I haven't looked at the schedule, to be honest with you. I don't know where and what teams play when and all that. So could change. But yeah, definitely the Chiefs in first place in this division, coming off their historic run last year and winning a Super Bowl.
I think that'll about wrap it up for us. Thank you to everybody listening right now. We appreciate you guys, and if you haven't subscribed to us, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you don't know, we have our podcast on YouTube at Slackers Sports Show on YouTube. You can listen to them there. Subscribe on that channel. We'll probably be having some more content outside of the podcast coming soon with fantasy football wrapping up, so make sure you watch us there. And also, if you want to follow us on Twitter, we post different stories we find interesting, podcast links, things like that. You can follow us on Twitter at Slackers Sports.
Yeah, and so we've done all of the NFC teams. We are 3 of 4 of the AFC. The next one will be the AFC East, which will be the last division we talk about. And I think what we're going to try to do is get it out Thursday before the start of the Kansas City and Houston game. That is the plan. Usually we record these on Wednesday and I put them up Sunday, but I want to try to get them all in before the actual season starts. So the AFC East will be out hopefully next Thursday before the Chiefs and Houston game starts. But if you want to listen to any of the other ones that are up, they are all up and will stay up for eternity or until their website goes down or something. So if you want to listen to those, go check those out and subscribe to us.